And we're off. Hi, everyone. It is 3:03 p.m. East Coast time on the 9th of January, 2025. My name is Luke Thomas. Welcome. This is episode 236 of my live chat. How are you doing today? How are you doing on this wonderful Thursday? Freezing cold here in our nation's capital. It is 28 degrees presently. It was in the teens this morning. There's still snow everywhere on the ground. It has been quite disruptive. Beautiful, but disruptive. Hope you're doing well out there, wherever you are. Thank you for joining me. Thumbs up if you're watching. Hit subscribe if you haven't. It's free. It doesn't cost you nothing. Here's how this is going to go. We'll go for about an hour on the we'll go for about an hour on the free questions. I put up a thread on the community section on youtube.com/Luke Thomas. You guys fill it up. We'll go for about an hour on that. And then if you want, you can fire something into the super chat and we'll get to the paid portion. One counter to that, one caveat, I suppose, if you're a member of the channel, you don't have to pay anything in the super chat. You can just fire something in there and we'll read it just the same. So whatever you want to do, I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much for being here. It is greatly appreciated. Let's see. Without further ado, you know how this goes. Let's get this party started, shall we? All right. Very good. I think one update from last week, folks, we were talking last week about the H1B Visa controversy, which it was in the media cycle and now it's gone. I suspect it will rear its head at some point in the future. But just very quickly, folks were asking, like, where can you get some policy examinations about the ways in which certain IT firms utilize it and or domestic firms use it to suppress wages. Again, there are going to be counterexamples to this. It's not altogether a program that throwing out the baby with the bathwater, but to the extent that it has anything that's in need of reformation, the Economic Policy Institute has done a tremendous amount of work on this, including their own studies on this subject with credentialed academics. Economic Policy Institute, the EPI, has done an enormous amount of work on this. So if you're interested in seeing what some of the academic research shows, that yes, of course, there are good. We want to make sure that we're getting the very best and brightest in the country to do the best kind of work. Nevertheless, could this program undergo some reformation that could make it better and stronger and better for all involved? It could. Along some of that line, the research of the Economic Policy Institute will get you there. All right. Let's see. Is there any other housekeeping notes? Oh, yes. One more, if I may. I'm not doing it because I think the card is all that great, although there's some nice parts to it. But we are going to do a watch along and probably a brief post-fight show for this weekend's UFC card. Of course, that's Mackenzie Dern back in action against Amanda Hebos, a rematch. I'm actually more interested in the Chris Curtis-Roman Kopylov fight than I am that one, but nevertheless, but it's the first card of the year, right? It's the first sort of major-ish. When I say major, I mean with a major promotion, major card of the year. So we're going to do a watch along for it. It should be some fun. Yeah. All right. Very good. Okay. Oh, and then last but not least, recommendation for you. I've been trying this stuff. This has zero sugar. I think it's zero calorie, and no caffeine either. Have you guys seen this? Sprite Zero Sugar Chill Cherry Lime. It's got quite a mouthful. Pretty decent if you're looking for a carbonated, low calorie, in this case, 0 calorie, no caffeine option. Not bad. All right. Enough of that nonsense. Let's get to your questions. All right, let's refresh this and then pull it up. Let's do it this way. Yes. Okay, first one's up. I hate to ask a repeat question, but did Mighty Mouse give you the green light? I forgot to hit him up about it on the mousetrap. Yeah, I forgot. I did not hit him up. I need to. I meant to do it. I forgot. I'll do it. If not, can you reach out to him? Yes, I can. So let's go to the second one here. PFL cuts their 2025 tournament prize from $1 million to $500K. Yes, indeed. I saw that. For the first time since 2018, does PFL start to run out of money finally? Is it the investors who start to pull out, or is it some strategic restructuring in your opinion? I guess we'll have to wait to see more. Don Davis, I saw this just before today's program. Don Davis is going to go back on with Mike Heck over at MMA Fighting and do a town hall with them. I'll just say I'm glad he's doing it. I tend to think you learn more from those than not. And so for that reason, I'm looking forward to it. I'll leave it at that. I don't think they're cutting the prize of something that is central to their identity if they didn't have to. And if you think about it, on nights where they've had like 6 champions, if you're taking those prize money, this is not quite right, because people think that they won $1 million on that night. They don't. They win the remainder of whatever they've been paid. Let's say $250,000 in the previous tournament bouts. They'll get the remainder of that gets them to $1 million. So they do get $1 million collectively over the season. But that typically would put them in excess of 500K. I mean, well in excess of 500K. It would be closer to 700 or 800K in many of these cases. And now they're down to 500K. So you're talking about, depending on how the math works, potentially several $1 million that they're saving on just those events alone. That's actually pretty significant, to say nothing of some of the other ones. But like, no MMA promotion reduces a prize that is somewhat central to their identity if they don't have to. Seems like they have to, right? We had kind of been discussing this. I had heard that prior to even some of it, Don Davis tweeting last week that they were going to allow the PFLs are just going to allow elbows no matter what. It's like, that's a good thing. That's a good thing that he's doing that. It's a good thing that that's happening. However, that only brings them square with the existing state of the unified rules. It doesn't really advance it in any kind of interesting or meaningful way. But more to the point, like, prior to all of that, I had heard that the company was undergoing serious deliberations about who they are, about what their identity was going to be, and what their business plan was going to be as a consequence. What needed change? What needed to be kept? How do we really rethink this product? I mean, these are fairly existential questions. You combine that now with this revelation that they're going to be slashing the prize money, not exactly in half, but significantly so. And I think it kind of gives you a picture of really what they're up against. This is a promotion that we've been telling you guys about. I feel like you can get this analysis probably in a few different places, but I feel like the analysis I've provided for you for PFL has really held up over time. It has been quite durable in its truth value, holding up. Any number of ways to parse this. But the reality is they don't have a fan base. Their only customer is, they don't have any consumer-facing identity. Their consumer, the way they make money is as a B2B business, either doing business with a sovereign wealth fund like they might find in Saudi Arabia, taking other forms of money to go up to various locations in a similar kind of vein, or doing deals and media rights deals with companies. But they don't actually have anything that they're selling to the customer in any kind of way, because they don't have a customer. They don't have a consumer. They have people that might tune in on occasion for what they have, but not much more. And a huge portion of that, if not the key portion of that, is a consequence of the nature of the market, which is that the UFC makes 90 cents of every dollar made in the industry. It is not possible for anybody to compete with them. Their demise is, as I said before, nothing changes here. It is inevitable. It's not a question of if, it's merely a question of when. What you might have noticed along the way is that they have compounded some of these, let's call them incredible headwinds, by making a series of other boneheaded decisions, or otherwise ones that simply don't really make a great deal of sense. Or even in cases where they did do good things, or things that you thought could have been good, they turned out to not really be good. Hey, we're going to have 10 Bellator events. I think they had, 2 or 3. And then on top of that, you've got Bellator champs just livid because they're just sitting on their hands in their primes, which you can, I think, totally understand. This company is not built for the future. I hope everyone can understand that. That's been my message since day one. Nothing about that changes. Now you're seeing them making some positive developments. That's true, but in accordance with slashing of their budgets in certain ways. What do you want me to tell you? This was about the most, not this particular thing, that they were going to go from ultimately winning $1 million on a season to 500K. I don't know if that was the most predictable part, but that there would be a series of steps that they would take that would like signal a slow demise. How would I know something like that would happen? Because I have seen it. with other promotions. They go through this flailing on their way typically out the door. Again, the vast majority of what they are up against are problems they cannot solve. There is nothing they can basically do if the UFC doesn't want to play ball on co-promotion to ever become a legitimate competitor. It's not possible. They cannot do it. It cannot be done. But then they do other things, as I've indicated, on top of that just make you scratch your head. And it's like, well, I guess they just weren't really built for the long haul anyway. Yeah. Yeah. Their demise is not... I don't get glee out of this, man. It's bad. Dude, if they go, it's bad for the fucking sport. You've already lost Bellator. Now you're going to lose PFL. Like, where are all those fighters going to go? UFC can't pick them up. And if they even if they got rid of a bunch, they could still sign more. A bunch would fall through the cracks. This is bad. This is bad for the sport. People have been asking, like, what's the downside of monopoly? You're about to find out. I don't know if this year or the next, but soon enough. Soon enough. It's nice to have everything in one umbrella that's neatly sorted, but the calamitous industry-wide effects that it will have, among other problems, I think are going to be hard to ignore at some point. People have been ignoring them and then being like, oh, these are the PFL's problems because the PFL makes bad decisions. The PFL makes bad decisions. They make bad decisions. They make decisions that make you just go, what the fuck are you doing? And they do it over and over and over and over again. But people think that that's why they're going to go out of business. No, they could make great decisions and they would go out of business. Okay. When discussing potential big players at lightweight in 2025, UNBC left out Max Holloway. Yeah, we did, I guess. That was not intentional. Did you forget about him in that context? I guess I did. I mean, I can't speak for BC, but I definitely did. Or you just didn't think he'd have a lot of success at the top of the division? No, I'm not saying that. I don't exactly know how that would go. I mean, the thing is, you've got a bunch of those guys at lightweight. We all thought they were going to get ushered out a couple of years ago, and they didn't. Credit to them. They've held on. But now they're really kind of reaching the end stage. Poirier's got one more. Gaethje has kind of signaled the end is probably not too far. Chandler's going to be 40 before too long. I mean, you know, like they're really going to bump into the kind of a wall that will give them problems. I did for, I'll just be honest, I did kind of forget to include him up there, but you know, showing what he showed against Justin tells you that he is at least I mean, in some ways that's a favorable stylistic matchup in some ways, but I think, listen, the general point is the correct one that I think you're probably hinting at, which is that I do think he'll have some success at 55. Hart, you know, will he be champion? Yeah, I don't know about that. That seems like a lot. But he's already the BMF champion. Obviously, he had a super decorated career at 145. And I think he's going to win some big fights at 55. You know, beyond that, it's really hard to be precise. But no, I that was not an omission of I thought that, you know, that this is some kind of signal that I thought Max was done or something. No. That's really not. It's an unintentional oversight in that way. All right. Can you see that one? Yeah. Could you comment on the ethics of Cormier releasing medical or injury information about UFC fighters while being a UFC employee, e.g. sharing the photo of Whitaker's jaw post-Hamzat and claiming he was told Shavkat carried an injury into the Gary fight? Isn't this pretty unethical? I guess it's just another sign the UFC has no regard for professional standards. They foster an environment of anything goes as long as it doesn't disrupt our interest. That is an interesting question. I'd have to think about that for a second. So here's the issue that they're up against. Okay, let's think this through for a second. The issue is that a lot of this stuff, injury reports, injury suggestion, a lot of it stays in, is a product of the rumor mill. And I think DC, with the exception of the jaw thing from Whitaker, because that's like literally physical evidence, but with the exception of that, if you, for example, the Shavkat thing, he had kind of intimated he had heard it. He didn't really say where he had heard it from. I don't believe, right? I believe he didn't declare that. I could be wrong about that. I think that's right. But the point I'm trying to make is the kind of conversation that people have about injuries and the nature in which they suffer them either before a fight or during a fight, a lot of that just sort of gets speculated on, discussed, rumors get introduced, and there's a kind of a tolerance for that on some level. What you're talking about is, I think, especially in the case of, I think, the Whitaker case with the jaw and posting that. It'd be one thing, it's like, hey, we zoomed in from a screenshot that we were able to take during the fight itself from the official broadcast, and then sharing that in a way that hadn't really been seen before. I think that would be totally fine. But sharing a picture of a completely shattered jaw without the approval of somebody like that, that does seem unethical. Now, I want to be clear. I don't think Cormier is doing it in a way that I don't think he's fully aware of the implications. I think this would have to be explained to him that this is probably inappropriate. But yes, I would generally agree. I think if you're a UFC employee, of which I'm guessing he is, I don't know if he's an independent contractor or not. Nevertheless, he works for them. Discussing the nature of injuries, unless you're going to report on it, or you've got express approval to discuss these medical conditions or ailments, it seems like you shouldn't if you haven't been given that. I think it's pretty fair. It's not something I've actually thought much about, because I've kind of always treated it as like almost an extension of just the kind of thing that gets discussed in gyms or locker rooms or whatever. Like, hey, here's what I've heard going on. Here's what you've heard is going on. Let's compare notes, kind of a thing. But if you're a UFC employee and or you work for them, you have to have a much more buttoned up approach to that kind of a thing. And then what you say on either a YouTube channel, the broadcast, or social media thereafter, I think this is not something I had fully, I just had never really considered it more fully, but I think you're absolutely right. I think you're right. I think I doubt that they're doing this. Listen, I'm the first to be critical of the UFC, but there are times that people accuse them of negligence and they think it is intentional. I don't think this would be one of those cases. I really, really don't. There's a different kind of intention they have, which is sort of like a belief in the power of what they do. This seems to me an unintentional oversight. We'll have to see. Do they police this? Is this brought to Cormier's attention? I don't know. I don't know DC. I've obviously interacted with him many times over the years. I don't find him to be a bad guy at all, but I agree that this behavior should be buttoned up. I don't know to what extent it runs into any kind of laws that might be there, but beyond that, revealing private medical information, especially the kind that can be considered by those who are having their medical situation revealed embarrassing, or otherwise they just simply don't want to reveal that sort of thing. Yeah, that has to be buttoned up. It's a great point, actually. Bisping was on Rampage's podcast, and they were talking about the Dana White bonus that fighters receive seemingly under the table. They both said they got bonuses more than their purse. Yeah, I believe that. Why would Dana try to hide this? It might help his fighter pay issues. No, it actually makes his fighter pay situation even better. Why would they do that? Why would someone who is manifestly and inarguably underpaying his athletes also want to keep them in the dark about who is making what? Well, I mean, that answers the question, doesn't it? Right? So here's the deal. If you are contracted, win and show, 250, so you win, you make $500K, and I come along and I give you a bonus of, because I'm feeling generous, $2 million, I have to declare that years later when the court asks for it. All this money is accounted for. I hope everyone understands that. It's not some separate accounting ledger where this money doesn't exist. It's all accounted for. But more to the point, maybe the other person did okay and I don't like them as much, but I want to give them some money because they're one of the stars of the company. You got to sort of play the game a little bit. You give them $1 million, they feel like they're on top of the world. They get a bonus. Like, this is, now I've added another $1 million to it. Meanwhile, the other person's getting $2 million. They have no way to compare notes. And that absence of a standard, that absence of the ability to understand what the standard is, measure what you got against that, measure that against your performance against somebody else who got that kind of a thing. All of that makes fighters both less likely to ask for something, and as well not even know what to ask for. And also what I would say is, if you've got a system where you're awarding bonuses, this is essentially a monetary system that is inherently built on favoritism, right? You're the one who controls the purse strings. You're the one who decides who gets the bonuses. You're doing it discreetly. It's going to be almost a learned helplessness on the part of the fighter to not rock the boat, to be ready to receive these kinds of things, to like, fingers crossed, I hope I get one. And of course, some of that is natural. It'd be natural to want to get money in one of these kinds of economic arrangements. But the point I'm trying to make is it helps set in motion a mentality where you treat this as both normal and expected, and you're letting yourself be you're making yourself available to this kind of a treatment. Like, that's the way I have to amend the way I behave in order to make the most of this system. And this system requires my not just star power. Yes, that's true. And that can be lots of ways you can generate that. But in general, my participation is also dependent on me getting money here. I need to play by the rules, and play by the rules of favoritism that increase my chances of getting this, because you don't have any kind of universal standard by which you can be measured, or having an understanding of what the basic purse structure is of anybody else, or what their bonus structure has looked like. It's a way of purposely keeping money in the dark. That's why they do it. And then institutionalizing a certain kind of behavior from the fighters and expecting, like, this is what economic reward looks like. And these are the kinds of conditions in place that you'll have to establish in order to receive this economic award. It's both. It's a psychological thing, and it's a way of making comparison difficult. It's keeping money in the dark. Guys, look at the places where the athletes have the most amount of leverage, and maybe in certain cases too much, which is a separate conversation. But let's take one where they've got a healthy amount of leverage, relatively speaking anyway, which would be like the NFL. Do they put money in the dark? They have bonus structures. You just saw Mike Evans, I think, get $3 million for his play with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but they actually had to keep him in the game and throw to him extra so he could reach that. But the point I'm trying to make is, it's not that there's a question of bonuses. It's just that none of this stuff is private, and there are standards built into what the collective bargaining agreement calls for guys on the practice squad, minimum rookie salaries, and all the way up. And everyone's got, this guy has this incentive system built in, so we're going to take that and build our incentive system based on that. Everything is in the light. Everything is standardized. Everything is available for comparison for you to understand, and then build some kind of different structure if you want into whatever contract is there. That's how it works when the athletes have a say. Now, granted, the hilarious part to all of this is you can explain this to the fighters, and they don't give a fuck. They don't care. I think it'd be way too much to say they enjoy not making money. I don't think that is true, but they are profoundly, deeply in their core committed to not doing anything to ever really substantively fix their economic situation, with the exception of the guys in the lawsuit, of which there's a handful. I mean, I realize that it's a class action suit, but I mean, like, the ones who actually went and did something about it, they are constitutionally incapable of the kind of viewpoint, willingness to accept there's a greater degree of financial literacy, and or any other act that would meaningfully contribute to a greater understanding, and potentially collectively could work together towards a genuine improvement in the way in which they get paid. They don't give a fuck. But if we're just talking about, like, the nature of why pay is this particular way and why it's been that way, it's because it favors management over talent to a significant degree. It's just hilarious that the talent knows this and won't do anything about it. Is this the same guy? No? All right. Conservatives seem to have everything going their way at the moment. I mean, socially, politically, in the courts, and even in media. What should a Democratic voter make of this? Well, you should ask a Democratic voter. I mean, I voted Democratic in times, but how do I answer this? What should you make of it? This is something I said before the election, and some people on my side of the political aisle got real mad at me for it, but I'm going to reiterate it because I don't see how it's in any way wrong. We are dealing at a current point in time, not with people who couldn't support a different worldview, and in fact do support a different worldview, but they really have no political means of expression for that worldview, absent somebody like Bernie Sanders. And the point I'm trying to make is the Democratic Party is a pathetic party. I think if people were really acquainted with parties in Europe and to what extent they represent genuine forms of left-wing political thought, they would be very, very surprised to see that people in this country think that the Democratic Party is a genuine left party. It's really not. In some cases it is, in many cases it is absolutely much more center, in certain cases center right on any number of issues. I think partly that unwillingness to play any kind of opposite standard has made them to a degree obsolete in certain cases. Certainly no genuine alternative. But the point I would say is more to that is if we're just living in a time of the ascendant right. I've been reading this book. I'm not going to tell you about it yet because I have some big plans for it. I have been reading a book. On the nature of polarization. I've discovered this book by total accident. I discovered these authors by total accident. And I'll just say this: you get told a story when you live in the United States. Certainly I did when I came up in my teenage years. So, 90s, late 90s. And then I was in college in the early 2000s. And the story that they tell you is that there's been a few bumps in the road, but that there has been like an inexorable trend in a certain direction that the country has been going in. Obviously there's been a civil war and whatnot, but let's say certainly since the 1960s, right? And what you find out when you dig into the details is that is absolutely not true. That is not true at all. In fact, there have been, and you can decide which version of it is progress, but that a much more careful reading of the events gives you a different perspective, which is that, and this is why I made this point about Dana White getting so heavily invested into one political party and one political affiliation, like so aggressively. And the reason for that is it's a competing process between warring factions. How those cross-cut is a different conversation. But the reality is the current nature of what we're doing is one side trying to undo what the other one does in these sort of 8 to 15 year electoral waves. And much like the Obama coalition was to undo the Bush White House and the coalition of what he represented, Trump is going to undo all of that. These are these ascendant political coalitions. We are living at a time of one of these ascendant political coalitions, and I think they're about to have their apex moment. The question is what's going to happen really after that. If past is prologue and these guys who have who have studied the nature of polarization are right, there's going to be not the same coalition, but a different coalition of folks who are opposed to the existing one who will eventually have their way. And it's not just it is now just a cross-cutting thing along similar lines. It hasn't always been. The point I'm trying to make is we are ascendant. The right is ascendant in this country presently, and you just kind of have to accept that for what it is. You're asking, like, why are they ascendant? Because of the nature of this struggle. One group is, as I indicated, is just trying to undo. So, for example, the first big cleavage that these guys note in terms of the people being divided along partisan lines and then identitarian lines is the civil rights struggle, because it's the first time you had a sort of a coalition of folks who were black, you had some whites, and some other groups mixed in. It was the first time you had sort of like a non-unitary coalition that cross-cut around a few different demographics, including race demographics, coalesced into one, which coalesced a different opposite political identity. But here's the reality. In order to make those people get what they were looking for out of the state, you had to expand the power of the federal government in order to do that. And you had to really power it in certain ways to get those ideals met for that coalition. Well, then now this coalition has decided at different forms and different ways over different times, but when there's various points of their ascendancy, to simply undo big portions of that. And you can see that there was the last one we had was the Obama coalition had built up any number of different ways in which they've changed the federal government or responded to the nature of those coalitional needs. And now this next group is going to undo it. Someone's going to undo this eventually. I mean, it's sort of like a weird argument to be like, just wait it out. I don't mean it in that particular sense. What I'm just trying to tell you is if there's any kind of historical comfort, we are in a very strange time and a unique time, but in terms of coalitional battles and the way in which one group just simply undoes the other one, this is not unusual. This is not unusual. It is part of the course of how it all moves. You just kind of have to see it for what it is. But like, why is it now? Because these coalitions all tend to ossify from the inside over time, no matter which one it is. That's not quite true. But a lot of the more expedient political things that they attempt, that ossifies over time. That has electoral consequences, and then the whole thing turns slowly and then all at once. We're at the all at once stage. I'm confused, this person writes. Dana says he wants people like Weidman, Tony, and at one point BJ Penn to retire. Yet he keeps giving them fights. And I suspect he'll do the same with Cerrone. Why not just cut them? Well, I guess Cerrone's coming back. I don't know. I mean, he said he was. I don't know what the story with that is. Weidman, they may cut him. I don't know. Tony apparently is according to Kevin Lee, is in talks with the GFL, which would mean he is probably not with UFC anymore. And then BJ Penn, I mean, after he was getting like slept in the lava shack, they cut him. So they eventually did. It tends to have to get really, 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 really bad for them to do that kind of a thing. Or they have to be like really expensive and on some like long deal that they've kind of seen the life of, something like that. But a lot of these guys will fight for pennies, not pennies, but not what they once were able to command just to hold on to a roster spot, so that they're kind of like they service a bit of a need. In that way. I mean, I feel like with Tony, they've kind of done since the Chandler fight, they've done some humane matchmaking, and even before that, they were doing some humane matchmaking. Weidman, I feel like they're trying to match him up with somebody that they think he can compete with. Obviously, it's not even clear who that is at this point. So I don't think I'd be surprised if by the end of this year, either of them are competing for the UFC, to be honest with you. You're asking, like, why did it take so long? I don't know. I thought it would have taken a lot less time than this one, too. You know what I mean? I thought it would have taken a lot less time than this, too. But here we are. Luke, with Illia's brother, Alexander, I'm just going to say Alexander. I'm not sure how to properly pronounce it, but Alexander competing on the 312 prelims. How do you see his UFC career going? From watching his previous fights, his style is very similar to Illia's. He has good boxing, wrestling, and grappling, and is Illia's coach. With bantamweight being an extremely strong division, do you foresee him ever being a top 5 fighter? There is simply no way to know with little Topuria how this is going to go. I watched a bunch of his fights, or at least whatever is available on the internet. You can see his last one that he had before getting to the UFC, some muscle-bound dude with a nice part in his hair. And Topuria, Alexander Topuria, runs him over, goes to mount a crucifix, and basically gets the fight stopped from there. It's fine, but like you don't really learn a whole lot from it. Look at the other guy's record; he's like 3-2. Wasn't that interesting? Then the guy who fought before that, I think, was like 1-11. Yeah, Topuria runs him over too. He doesn't have many fights. He started his career quite some time ago, like 9 years ago, and hasn't been very active, I guess, to make way for his brother. I'm not entirely certain. So the point I'm trying to make is he looks like he could be reasonably talented. He looks like there could be something to it. I'm glad that I guess he's in the UFC. I just feel like you need to we really have to have very managed expectations. Like it's usually not the case. I mean, there's some exception to this, but it's usually not the case. Like if there's ever like a really talented fighter, like their brother is usually good but not great. This has happened like a few times if you look at the history of things. And I suspect that this will be a very similar case. I'd be very surprised if Topuria's brother were as good as Illia's brother was as good as him. I suspect it'll be a pretty substantial downgrade. And he doesn't have much tape. From what tape exists, he looks fine, I guess. Good. But against competition that just doesn't tell you much, I guess we'll see. He's only 28 years old, so he's still pretty young. I guess we'll see. You know what I mean? Like, there's just not enough evidence to be like, oh, I can affirmatively declare he's going to be X or Y. If, again, judging by history, usually brother tandems, one is much better than the other. There's just not enough information. How do you think a fight between Dakota Ditcheva versus the following fighters would play out? Schevchenko, Fiorot, Natalia, Silva. All right, let's think this through. So we got Dakota Ditcheva. Let's start with Schevchenko. Shevchenko's going to try and take her down and might have some success, but I think over the course of a 5-round fight, Schevchenko could beat her, certainly. I think it's a close fight. I think I might slightly favor Shevchenko because of the wrestling, but I think Ditcheva could cause real problems for her. Wouldn't be surprised at all if she won. Fiorot's a tough one. Fiorot's a tough one because she has a keep away style and she's physical at it. A lot of people have keep away styles and they play the distance game, and they're actually doing that because in certain ways up close they're not very physical. Fiorot is the opposite of that. She has a keep away style aided by the fact that she actually in close quarters is very physical. She's tough. That's a tough one. I don't know if anyone can beat her right now. That's a tough one. And Natalia Silva, she gets hit too much. I think Ditcheva would beat her. Ditcheva's awesome, dude. I'm telling you, she's awesome. I don't know if she's the best in the world in her weight class right now, but I know she can. I think she can. I mean, the point I would like to make is that can Dakota Ditcheva compete with Valentina Shevchenko and Manon Fiorot and Natalia Silva? Yes. And I think she beats probably 2 of the 3. You know what I mean? At bare minimum, I think she beats 1 of the 3. Again, that's just a personal opinion. I have no way of proving this until they actually make the fights, but you can mark me down for that. I think Dakota Ditcheva is one of the very, very best things in finding her, and to an extent helping to develop her as well, that PFL has done. That's like, you know, PFL's got some wins. They've got some wins. They got a lot of L's, but they got some W's too. One of them absolutely unequivocally has been the discovery, promotion, and development of Dakota Ditcheva. They've hit pay dirt with her. Why does Donn Davis do the things he is doing? So I apparently like this. I don't recall liking this, so I don't know if one of the other persons who runs my channel liked this. That's funny. All right, I'll come back to that. Why does Donn Davis do the things he is doing? He openly has said he is new at promoting, but that can't be an excuse for being an idiot. I don't think he's an idiot. His recent list that he posted on LinkedIn shows he is out of touch with MMA fans. If he can't get MMA fans to watch, why does he think the UFC fans and casual fans would? You wrote his recent list that he posted on LinkedIn shows he is out of touch with MMA fans. Guys, I don't. Yes. The list that he posted on LinkedIn, I'll pull it up here in a second. We can read it. The list that he posted on LinkedIn, it is true that showed a degree of being out of touch. I'd actually go one step further and be like, the fact that the relevant conversation he wants to have is taking place on LinkedIn and not the places that MMA fans are tells you a lot more about who like what he values as important feedback. Like MMA fans, I mean, they might have some of them I'm sure are on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is not a place for like MMA fans to congregate. It's not a place for like MMA discussions. Typically, it's not a hotbed of anything. It's a place obviously for people who are either in the workforce, trying to join the workforce, trying to change their spot in the workforce, but typically people who are like, you know, workforce aligned in some kind of a way, often people who are not in your exact job, although some of those too, but you know, your general workforce area. And he was talking to them. How many times have you noticed how hard it is for either Pete Murray or Donn Davis to talk to MMA fans? They never talk, almost never, I should say. They almost never talk to MMA fans. This is what I mean about their product. He's posting on LinkedIn. He's doing deals with Saudi Arabia, He's doing media rights deals, which the other two UFC does as well. But then they've got no consumer base. Can you not see? And I'm not picking on you. I'm asking rhetorically. Can you not see that there is a connection between the fact that they don't really have a fan base and he is trying to have discussions about the brand and the company on LinkedIn? People think it's a small gesture, and of course it is. He's just posting on a different version of social media that's more workforce and job oriented aligned. I understand that. I get that by itself is no great signifier. The point I'm trying to make is if your entire worldview is about talking to your peers in the space, and your entire brand, if your entire world, the conversations you want to have about work are about your brand among places that like LinkedIn fosters these kinds of conversations, right? About how's the job going and what the workforce looks like in the upcoming, next quarter or the next year. Like, to have that kind of a mentality where that's like the point of conversation, where you're going to have it and on what terms, it should be no surprise that he says to Mike Heck that, when I'm not working, I don't really watch MMA, which is no great sin, but it's like you're promoting this and you don't watch MMA. That's a huge red flag. And then again, you don't have a customer base. They have no ability to reach out to the fan and pull them in and make a one-on-one connection with them. Dana White has a lot of problems. There's a lot of things that I don't think he's great about. And I also think he's bored with MMA. But when he's trying to make a connection to the fans, he doesn't have a very hard time doing it, does he? Dana is not posting on LinkedIn. Dana, then again, I think bragging about gates is weird because, as Tommy Tohold says, the arenas aren't getting bigger. They're not adding more seats. You're just charging more. But okay, the point I'm trying to make is he's trying to also say, yes, look how much money we raised. Of course, they're showing you the monetary figure. But hey, we sold out. Look how many people came for this. Being very sort of explicit about what was the fans' experience in the arena. And also watching what's the fans' experience at home. It's just a question of fan first. It's a question of, and of course that's a little unfair because the UFC is also very much business first. But I'm saying Dana at his best. Dana at his best. At his best, these are considerations that come natural to him. At his best, these are considerations that are of extreme importance to him. That's a very different mode than someone who is, I'm going to talk to venture capitalists, I'm going to talk to television executives, I'm going to talk to operators of sovereign wealth funds, and then I'm going to have these conversations with my peer group, my working peer group, essentially, on LinkedIn. It's not that he posted there and that tells you everything you need to know in terms of a pass-fail test. It's that what he signifies as important to him, forget the contents, and who is there to receive it, tells you exactly the kind of audience he is trying to grow. The B2B audience, the business-to-business audience. It's this peers in the space. There are guys who might come up in the same kind of work lineage that he came up, and they have other businesses now, and he's talking to them. He's not talking to the MMA fan. This is what they do, man. This is the part that just drives me fucking crazy. It's like, guys, you already have a pretty impossible task, right? You have a pretty impossible task. You have to convince the public that your guys are legitimate. And the only way to do that is with the co-promotion of another entity that won't co-promote with you. It's a very, very difficult job. How is it you are making it worse like this? Right? I mean, do you guys ever, did anybody here live in New York? Does anyone ever know anybody that worked on Wall Street or here in DC, which, by the way, I think Don Davis is from, or, people who worked at fucking Deloitte and stuff like that, like these, or McKinsey or whatever. These people that are just they're, many of us can be career obsessed, but they're career obsessed and that's their social orbit as well. And everything is kind of geared towards that. That's their focus. That's their peer group. That's their social group. That's their online life, who they communicate with. That's who they direct their attention towards and who they receive it from. And all of that is happening outside of like talking to MMA fans. And I know he tweets on occasion and be like, oh, elbows are for you. But it's like, dude, you're talking at him. You know what I mean? Like, you're talking at him. And like the other part too is like they just don't do any media. They don't do any local media. They don't have a relationship to the fan base, either directly or through the media or any other way. But they've got a relationship to their working peer groups in DC and New York and, you know, LA and Riyadh and other places like that. That's who they're talking to. And I think you're asking about now the content. The content here, let me pull it up so you guys can see if you guys haven't seen this. Oh, you know what? Let's see if I can get them on. I don't know if I can get them on LinkedIn or not. Let's see. Let's see if I can pull this up. Old Donnie. Here. Let's see if this comes up. Yeah, here. I'll show it to you. All right. So I'll read it to you if you can't see. Most social media celebrates success, and I had a great time last week doing the PFL post of triumph, okay? This post is the opposite. All of us entrepreneurs. You see? This is what I mean. All of us entrepreneurs. He's talking to other entrepreneurs. See what I mean? He's not talking to you. He's talking to them. All of us entrepreneurs took hard punches in 2024 and are still here to fight. Building any company has many issues and setbacks, which requires creativity and perseverance. All right. 5 hard things that happened to the PFL in 2024. 1, several potential new investors wasted a huge amount of our precious time, but we found the right ones. Okay. All right. Big new advertiser agreed to a deal and was in final contract, but new management stopped the deal. Well, in fairness, we had something like that happen to us this past year as well. So I am familiar with this. I'm sympathetic. I didn't take to LinkedIn to announce it, but nevertheless, okay, fair enough. I'm not sure what benefit you get from telling the world about it, but, you know, I have experienced similar kinds of problems. Some Bellator star fighters complained on social media about not fighting enough, but PFL makes the best overall decisions considering all of our fighters. Can you fucking believe the nerve of this guy? Can you fucking believe the nerve of this guy? They promised, or at least they publicly declared, maybe there's a better way to put that. They publicly declared a series of events that were going to meet the scheduled demands of what these guys needed just to stay busy, moderately busy. And they didn't do that. And you're sitting guys in their fucking primes, which are very, very short. And you got the balls to be like, well, we have to make decisions for everyone. No. It's okay to make strategic decisions on what's best for everybody. But y'all are the ones who said you were going to be able to take care of their needs. Y'all are the ones who said you were going to have X number of events. You had, I think, 20, 30% of those. Y'all are the ones that brought them into the fold. They didn't ask to join PFL. You brought them into the fold. So all of these things, all of this responsibility, you elected to take on, and then you failed to meet it. Buddy, the problem ain't that they complained on social fucking media. If they had never said a word, is there still a problem? If they had kept their mouths shut, is there still a problem? Yes, a big fucking problem. The fact that they articulated that to the public is not the problem. Holy shit. Here we go. 4, we are growing so fast with our new international leagues that costs in some regions are too high. Okay. Major new initiative and expansion is delayed a year by one of our partners, though no fault of PFL. Okay. Like all entrepreneurial companies, when faced with issues, PFL battled, navigated, and solved. PFL's enters 2025 in our best position ever. Do not let others foil you, keep you down, and stop you. To all entrepreneurs, you survive. Declare victory. Guys, who is this to? It is to entrepreneurs. That's who this is for. This whole fucking letter it's from one entrepreneur to another. No conversation with the fans at all. None. 0. Doesn't care. Not relevant to him. Not relevant. Look at some of these comments. Respectfully, Donn, I believe it's important to address the concerns of Bellator fighters. Yep. Let's see. Does he respond to any of these? Oh yeah. Look at the people replying. chief marketing officer for blah, 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 blah. Well done. You know, who else is here? A senior client accountant. That's not so much an entrepreneur, but you get the idea. Oh, yeah. C-levels. Yeah, here you go. C-suite guy. Thanks for the transparency. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, you know, you get the idea, guys. That's who he cares about. That's their focus. And that is why, in the words of the great Yoda, they will fail. Okay, so this is funny. I don't recall ever liking this. I don't even seen this question. I'll answer it just the same. I need to make sure there's a couple people who manage the site. I wonder if they clicked it. But either way, okay, here we go. Luke, boring question. Do you think there'll ever be an MMA fighter as famous as Conor again? Yeah, there's no fucking way I clicked that. I don't think that's right. Conor won in. Feels like he was a special case and the timing just worked out perfectly for him. I get this question time to time, like, will there ever be somebody as famous? The answer is yes. And not anybody on the horizon. There's nobody out there right now. And it may be some time before you see it again, but provided the sport itself doesn't collapse and just cease to exist, somebody will come along in a way that will shake things up. It just is not the era we're in at the present moment. And you might be like, what makes you so certain? And the answer is it just always kind of seems to happen that way. It takes time. It's organic. It doesn't happen overnight. The Conor also is a very special case. But it would just be foolish to be like, oh, well, that's a level of celebrity that is simply unattainable to every other human who ever attempts this. It may be rare, but someone will do it. Hypothetically, if the UFC brass and legal team could have been assured that Trump would regain office, in 2025, do you think the class action lawsuit would have been handled the same way, given that so much influence could be used with the Trump UFC? Wait, what? If the UFC brass and legal team, could have been assured that Trump would regain office in 2025, so like someone from the future, Biff came back from Back to the Future 2. All right. Do you think the class action lawsuit would have been handled the same way, given that so much influence could be used with the... Yeah, probably. I mean, I think partly they want this done with, right? And I think they were hoping that a monetary fine and some of the modest contract changes that have been achieved would have been enough to get there. I think that was their hope. That was the hope of everyone. So, letting it slow bleed, because you might be like, well, by the time it gets to the Supreme Court, maybe they like their chances, which is true. They might. But I guess I would reply to that, it's a long potential wait to get there. It's just settling. Like, what's the quickest way to get this done? Settling it. It's the quickest way. I realized that the Johnson case, it was really nowhere near that. But in terms of the monetary damages and the Lee case being essentially done with, we're, I think weeks or months away from that at this point. So yeah, the quickest kind of means to get rid of it. And also, again, I cannot overstate this. They're going to have to pay $375 million. This is nothing to them. This is nothing, and tax deductible too, by the way. It's nothing to them. This is chump change. This is going to slow them down at all. Luke, thoughts on the possible Chandler versus Paddy matchup that was being rumored for the UFC UK in March? How do you like Paddy's chances versus Mike? I got to tell you, I like that fight a lot. Paddy has proven to be a little bit better than I thought he would be. I still don't think he's going to be anything even close to championship caliber ever. How old is Paddy? I think he's still pretty young, right? Let's see. How old is the guy? He is 30. Oh, he just turned 30, as a matter of fact. So he's still got some time left. In fact, quite a bit. But what I would say is I don't really believe in like the upper bound ability of him to really. I mean, he might get a title shot. I don't think he'll ever be champion. Could be wrong. I don't see quite that talent with him. But he definitely has been better than I thought he would be. His striking has gotten a little bit better. His gas tank was an issue against Green, but dude, his back taking is strong. His submissions are pretty good. His guard is pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, he's physical for the weight class. Like, he's doing all right, man. He's doing all right. Like, I have to eat a little bit of crow with this one for sure. And Chandler is, I think, the kind of guy who would have feasted on him in a different era. But this version of Chandler, like pushing 40, Still a physical powerhouse himself, but reckless, wild. He's just always going to be that way. I could see Paddy getting lit up, yes, absolutely, and eating something because he's there to be hit, like no question. But if he gets Chandler's back, dude, he's going to finish him. Like, I feel very, very confident about that. It makes it a great fight. It's really good matchmaking. Really good matchmaking. I like that fight a lot. And it would do a lot for Paddy if he were to win. Also, for Chandler, not for nothing, I think it'd be a pretty decent win for him at this point, too. So it's not like beating Conor. All right. It's not that, but it'd be good. It'd be good for him. It'd be interesting. I really hope that fight gets announced. I like it a lot. Luke, why is the UFC the only major sports league that is still allowed to get away with consistently holding events with virtually no fans, the Apex, in the year 2025? I got called a casual by UFC fans for not being pumped to watch Dern Hebos battle it out inside of a warehouse. Because y'all let him. I let him too. Excuse me. We let them. That's why. You're asking, how are they the only ones still allowed to get away with it? Who's letting them get away with it? You might say ESPN. Okay, all right. Yes, that's true. Who else? Who else is letting them get away with it? We still, I don't cover these events like I maybe have once done. And by that, I mean fight nights, not so much Apex fight nights, since it's a relatively recent invention. But the point I'm trying to make is, oh, Jesus. Can you help me with that? Yeah. They know that when those come on, they don't have to have a super high number, but they're going to have people who just dude, okay, let's talk about this for a second. During the winter break, there were people posting every day, and it was obviously, tongue in cheek for a big portion of it, but they were sitting there posting things like, oh my God, day 3 of of the UFC break. What am I going to do? And I'm like, what? It's like, first of all, are there not other things you want to do in life other than sit around and watch fights? And I say that as somebody who has spent the vast majority of his adult life sitting around watching fights. Surely there's something, however many fights that y'all think y'all watch out there, if you're 25, I've done that times a fucking billion. Like, I have spent year after year after year after year after year after year after year doing nothing but watching fights over and 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 over again. People being like, oh, it's day 6. What the fuck am I going to do? There's nothing, there's no new fights. And I'm like, you're lamenting that you don't have Dern Hebos, like, objectively not a good UFC card. Again, there's a couple of gems on there, but not a good card, right? Not a good card. A bunch of bullshit on there. And you could go and, like, what do you know about the prime of Roy Jones Jr.? You can go watch his fights for free. You ever seen Rumble in the Jungle? Fuck that. You ever seen Fedor versus Crow Cop? And by the way, you want to talk about a fight that holds up? That one holds up, right? I could go on and on. You ever seen Royce Gracie versus Kazushi Sakuraba, a 90-minute fucking weird-ass beatdown? You ever seen that? How about this? You ever seen Rampage Jackson fight Kevin Randleman? Like, the point I'm trying to make is, between DAZN or YouTube or Fight Pass, like, good MMA, really good MMA, definitely existed before 2019. Go watch that. And people were, like, sitting there like it was a fucking hunger strike in the middle of prison, that, they can barely move, and the only nourishment that they could possibly get was Dern versus Hebos 2 in the UFC fucking Apex. That's how they get away with it. Because the way they have conditioned the fans is like, just expect new, rather than, like, having a diverse set of interests, but more to the point, like we're gonna be more selective about the kind of content that we put out. We're gonna do fewer events, whatever, so that you're not constantly expecting them to spit at you one every weekend nearly. And it gives you time to go back and look at maybe other things and really explore like the depth of combat sports history and MMA history. And like 2018 is not that far from here, and there was like really good MMA that happened that year, and then 2017, and like, you ever seen Josh Barnett fight Daniel Cormier? That's probably going to be a better heavyweight fight than anything that happens on the roster this year, with the exception of Jon Jones versus Aspinall, if they even fucking make it. Go watch it. But of course, this is what I'm talking about. There's no impulse to do that. The impulse is feed me new ones. I need new eye drops. Fucking, I can't, nothing that ever happened previously can in any way nourish me. It can only be the next one, even if it's objectively bad quality. That's how. And I suspect a big portion of this probably has to do with degenerate gambling, to be honest with you, but I don't think that fully explains it. But yeah, that's how they get you, because they know they've got you, and to an extent me, by the fucking balls. That's how. They know you're on bended knee. Fucking please give me Dern versus Hebos too. Oh, please, Jesus, grant me this one wish of watching real bad MMA, or pretty close to it in certain cases. God. Yes, of course, I could go back and watch some of the literal best fights that have ever happened, but fuck that. Fuck that. God, I don't want any of that. I want that new bullshit. I want that bullshit as long as it's new. Because I can gamble on the new ones. I can't gamble on Fedor versus Crow Cop. In FanDuel's name, we trust. Like, holy shit, folks. That's why. They got y'all by the balls. Here we go. Luke, how would Tom Aspinall do against these fighters in their prime? Big Nog, Fedor, Crow Cop, Ubereem, and Cain. All right, let's go one by one on this. How would he do against Big Nog? I think his speed would give him, and his takedown defense, I think would give. Now, Big Nog's tricky, but I think Big Nog was good. Big Nog was good at boxing, had a ridiculous chin, and was very, very tricky. But I just don't think his game is going to age well against the modern MMA fighter in certain ways. I mean, a good guard for a heavyweight is always going to be valuable to an extent, but his takedowns were not super awesome, and I think it'll be a real big problem against a guy like him. So I would favor and the speed too would give. I mean, the footwork would. Big Nog was strong, but he was slow-ish. Aspinall, I think, would give him problems. Fedor's an interesting one because at range, he'd be faster probably. But if he gets taken down, which I think he would, you saw that against Bigfoot Silva, would be a problem. So I might favor Tommy over him. Crow Cop, same thing. I think he would get the takedown. He's on the feet. I think he would whoop Big Tommy, but on the ground, obviously, it was a big problem. Ubereem's going to be too slow, but I think would beat him up on the feet. And then Cain is the interesting one. Prime Cain is the closest thing I can think of to being a real challenge for Big Tommy, because he could wrestle his ass off and he could strike on the feet. He probably wouldn't be as quick and not quite as big either. Maybe he might be as quick, but he certainly wouldn't be as big. But he is a fucking terrifying force. Cain, I think, of all of them, would give him the most problems. Yeah. Let's do maybe one more here. That's a weird question. Luke, do you ever fear for your life because of the events you choose to speak on or cover? No. I mean, there's certain countries I won't visit. I'm not going to visit Riyadh anytime soon, right? I'll probably skip Dubai this year because they'll throw your ass in jail for tweeting about them. Let me just be very clear with this. Anybody who tells you that like Dubai is a cool place to be, I mean, I could squint and then like look the other way if they wanted to. Well, that's not quite true. There are people in the region. I'll skip that one. I'll just say Dubai sucks and it's authoritarian as shit, and they'll throw your ass in jail for tweeting about them. That's a fact. They will. So yeah, I'm going to skip stuff like that, but in general, no, I don't walk around fearful that I'm some kind of a target. I'm not important enough to be a target for important enough people, and I haven't like caused enough trouble that I can detect anyway for important enough people in important enough ways for that to really matter. I think I tend to annoy a lot of powerful people. I don't know if I've sent them into a murderous rage. All right. Is there anything else here? So a big question about Big Francis. Save it for a different one because I may have some information about that later on. All right. If you want to, you could fire something into the super chat. We'll take a look. Or if you're a member, you can just ask for free because you're already a freaking member. So how about that? All right. Oof, Jesus, there's a bunch. All right. Jacob says, Luke, have you ever considered working at Fox Sports? I heard the benefits are great. Okay. Let's talk about that Fox. Jesus Christ. Let's talk about that Fox Sports 1 lawsuit. So there was basically a Persian, I guess she's American, but of Persian ancestry, Iranian hairdresser who was claiming that she was sexually harassed, specifically by Skip Bayless, claiming he wanted to pay her $1.5 million for sex and all kinds of stuff. But like what really came out of it was kind of amazing. Was the basic two things: that one, that Joy Taylor and Emmanuel Acho were in a romantic relationship, partly that there was an insinuation that he helped her advance because they had a romantic relationship, which they're not supposed to, because I think he had a significant other, or certainly she did at some point. So there's that issue. And then more to the point, it is alleged. I want to be very clear about that. All of these are just alleged. It is alleged that Joy Taylor also had a sexual relationship with one of the executives there, and that in the event that she got sideways with him, she would just tell the world that she was sexually harassed or assaulted by him to undermine him. And, these were all ways in which, along with Acho, she was able to like rise through the ranks from like, a relatively unknown Miami radio host. She's also, her brother was a famous football player, American football player. And she was able to get to the front. I want to be very clear about this. Like, first of all, these are just allegations. They're just allegations. I'm not telling you that they're not true. I'm simply saying I don't know what they are. I know them only as allegations. I don't know them as anything else. The people involved, Acho, Taylor, Bayless, I don't think Bayless has said anything. I don't think any of them have said anything. The only people that are talking about it are like Marcellus Wiley, fucking Jason Whitlock, and other folks who like at one point worked there. By the way, shouts to the biggest LeBron James booster I know, Nick Wright, not named in that at all. Colin Coward, not named in that at all. Those guys go there, give their takes, and go home. I respect that quite a bit. But first of all, a point I want to make is like, these are just some things someone's saying about someone. Granted, to do that in such a public way with very public figures makes you think that obviously like they would not do this if there wasn't something to it, but one never knows. I mean, I lived through the Duke lacrosse team getting accused of gang rape, and it turned out absolutely nothing happened at all, and it was a real big problem. So let's just sort of see what happens here. Secondly, like parts of that deal such that they're revelatory, it's like she was trying to paint a picture of like a toxic work environment, but like the actual part about sexual harassment that she is claiming is fairly minimal in terms of the broader expanse of things. In other words, I'm not entirely sure what the relevancy of it was, given what she was actually claiming she wanted harms met for. But I will say this. I don't know if what Joy Taylor is accused of doing is true. I have no fucking idea. Neither do any of you. These are allegations. If it is true, it is a calamity for women working in sports. Like if she did that to either get promoted, or she had told this person that she was going to basically, falsely accuse someone of misconduct in the workplace, and that's something that she had either planned to do or told someone she was going to do. I mean, that is, not only is that unethical beyond words, like the damage this does to women in the workforce, especially in sports media, who like, I got to be clear. I don't know Joy Taylor. I've never had any interaction with any woman in my job in sports media where this was ever any kind of relevant, thing I ever had to worry about. most of all the women that I've ever interacted with in my jobs in sports media did it like the guys did, the old-fashioned way, hard work, just hard fucking work. But there, of course, is this prevailing sense out there, again, especially with this ascendant right in culture, where there's like deep internal misogyny about how attitudes towards women and what they actually do and what they actually represent and what they're actually good for and how they actually conduct themselves. And a lot of that is bullshit, but not all of it. Again, these are allegations. If these allegations are true, it feeds into the very worst views that anyone could possibly have about women working in sports, and does enormous damage to the credibility that they're trying to do in terms of building themselves from scratch the hard way, right? Because, again, someone is alleged to have taken the ultimate fucking shortcut, unethical, again, alleged to have taken the ultimate shortcut, alleged to have done it in the most unethical of ways, alleged to have set up a future opportunity that is insanely unethical. It is so profoundly fucking damaging for women in sports media if this ends up being even remotely credible. Like a disaster of disasters. And I feel for him. So I hope it's not, for her sake. Well, excuse me, not so much for Joy Taylor, I don't know her, but for women's sake. I've said this before, man. There's so many of you dudes. I mean, maybe not you guys watching here, but you'll know some. I have looked into this notion that women are not your equal, and I have terrible news for you, for the people who are hanging on to this one. You're going to have two choices you're going to have to take. One is you cannot really look into any of this and then just accept that your sense of the world is accurate and you can continue to live this life, and I don't know if any harm will come of you, but you will hold bad and wrong and potentially harmful ideas about the world depending on who else is in your orbit. Or you can do what I did, which is actually really go down the rabbit hole and chase what you think is there and try to see how true it actually is. And if you do, you're going to come to the exact same fucking place that I went to, which is that there's nothing to it at all. You have been led to believe just a series of absolute bullshit. It's the biggest fucking empty set of nothing that ever was. There's, nothing. I mean, physical prowess, whatever, but I'm not talking about that. And there's so many of you who have not really taken that plunge, who've really tried to discern how true any of this is, because that requires both looking into the measurable world and what it tells us, and also looking internally in yourself and how you were able to begin to make what relationship women had to you in your life, how this was formative in your judgment about what they do or don't, helped you understand how you're supposed to navigate relationships with them, either in the workplace or romantically or whatever. And when you really begin to drill down on that and you get to the bottom of it, what you find is that if you had the ideas that I used to have about women, because I had a bunch of bad ones too earlier in my life, when you really begin to chase that one down to its core, to its essence, you have found that you have wasted so much fucking time, and that there were so many more healthy, positive, effectual relationships you could have had, and that you pissed away by holding on to ideas that hold no fucking weight under serious scrutiny. So you can decide which of those paths you want to walk down. One's a little harder than the other one, but it's a lot more revelatory. Edward says, Happy New Year, Luke. Happy New Year. If you fast forward to Jan 2026, what would constitute having a successful year, whether professionally or personally? Getting more sleep would be a big one. There's a couple of things I'm working on this month that we're going to have some announcements about. I can't really tell you, but it will be related to those projects. It's kind of putting on that. Obviously MK too, but there's some other things I've been working on that you just gotta hold on for a second. It's a perfectly reasonable question, but I'm going to ask for a few more weeks of patience. And I know it's like, but you've been teasing that since like August or before. True. Hear me out. It's coming. JP, who do you have winning the main event Saturday night? I saw O'Malley said he's picking Dern because of her butt cheeks. Yeah, it's a very enlightened sport. I would probably pick Hebos, but who the fuck knows? How long before the hardcore pundits such as yourself, Rogan, and Jack Slack are on the Jacoby Smith hype train? He's coming for top 5, in my opinion. Someone hipped me to him and somebody else the other day. We'll see. We'll see. I don't have a hard feeling about it one way or the other, but we'll see. Not like I had like a feeling about Topuria. I was watching Topuria. I was like, okay, he's real fucking good. I haven't gotten that vibe yet, but I guess we'll see. There's another name somebody sent me. I forget who it was. Stoic says, watching since the MMA beat days. Love the content. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you, bro. Saul, you see Craig Jones got drugged in Colombia. Is that a bit? I don't know if he was doing a bit. I mean, I can just tell you, like, I'm trying to tell you guys, I've been going to Colombia since 2013. It's now 2025, and I've never had an issue. Like, I'm not telling you that like Colombia is as safe as I don't know, Basel, fucking Switzerland. That's really not my point, but rather, I've been going there almost 15 years. And I've never had a problem. Like how you go to these places and what you do there. I'm not saying that the victims deserved their fate or something. That's really not the point. But to what extent you are courting risk, you know. But also, I couldn't even tell if he was doing that as a bit. But yeah, like the Burundanga, which is the devil's breath. That's a real fucking thing. My wife's cousin got hit with it, and they emptied out his apartment. They emptied out his bank account and they emptied out his apartment. They didn't hurt him, thank God. But he has a good job. He's a doctor down there, so he was able to recover financially. But yeah, they took his shit, and he's obviously natively Colombian. They took his shit. That was in Bogota. It happens. It happens. It's a real thing. And gringos who go down there and flash a lot of money. I mean, the dollar is what's the dollar to peso here? US dollar to Colombian peso. What's the exchange rate? 4.3. I mean, dude, you're going to live like a fucking king down there. You're going to live like a fucking king. Cartagena is the most expensive city in Colombia. And at 4.3 to 1 on the US dollar, dude, you're going to fucking ball over there on that kind of a money. You know, you show up doing that kind of thing and there's a lot of attention and your cameras and shit. Like, you know, you're just a certain level of risk that is inadvisable. I mean, I'm glad nothing worse happened, but the shit can happen. But at the same time, I'm also living proof that there are ways to do this that are, you know, travel friendly. Michael says, thoughts on pro arm wrestling? I know you enjoy strength sports. Do you remember John? I don't know who this dog is. So I actually don't. I actually consider arm wrestling to be a much more enlightened version of slap because there's actually a lot more strategy that goes into it. And really, if you think about it, if you go to like the Arnold or other like fitness expos, they'll do because these guys get like huge forearms. They'll do arm wrestling competitions there. I consider it like a strength sport more than I consider anything else. Yeah, it's spectacle because guys are arm wrestling and shit, but you know, and that looks like something, and there's big personalities. But in general, I think all that stuff is super cool. It's not enough to keep my attention because it's a lot of the same over and over again. But I don't hate on it, and I think those guys have a certain kind of strength that is amazing, and like, you know, takes a lot of work obviously to develop. Did I catch the Netflix debut of WWE? No, I did not. I don't care about the wrestling, but was interesting to see how they presented the product and what it could mean for UFC. I did not. What did you guys? Did you guys see it? I heard Hulk Hogan got booed like a bitch. I heard that. Paulie says, BC got a text from you during his ramblings yesterday, and he looked shook. Spill the tea. Did you give more thought to a Twitch or Patreon politics channel? What? Wait. I was texting with BC before the show. I'm trying to see. Where did I text him? Okay, so that was before. You know what? It was a boxing industry related question, but it wasn't a bad one. It wasn't a bad one. Okay. Did you give more thought to a Twitch or Patreon politics channel? Stay tuned, boys and girls. Stay tuned. Carnage says, Luke, thoughts on the LA fires? I don't have much of one except that it's deeply and profoundly tragic. Me and my family had to evacuate. Terrifying time for us. Damn. Though there is some slow positive progress on the fires. Thank you for the content, King Donk. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who have very, very firm ideas about how these fires got started and what made them worse and why they haven't been contained as quickly as we would have hoped or how they've spread. I don't know the first fucking thing about fires. I mean, I do think it's a bad look that the mayor was not there. I think it's a pretty bad look. And I'm sure that there is some level of policy failure along the way that has helped make this worse. But candidly, I don't know. And I'm reading about it, but I think like most Americans, I'm only learning about this stuff as these events unfold. And so I don't know what to say. If it turns out being like insanely poor policy and or governance, then we should all say as much, and it very well could be in the end. But I just see a lot of people like, oh, it's my hobby horse about why this is going this way. Oh, no, it's my hobby horse about why it's going this way. And I don't know anything about like Santa Ana winds. I don't know anything about West Coast fires. I don't know anything about those fires that happened in it was in Hawaii. Terrible ones. They're fucking horrible. So my heart goes out to everyone who had lost something. My heart goes out to everyone who had to evacuate, to that entire, I saw a lot of people don't have insurance or fire insurance, which is, I could not fucking imagine losing this house and not having insurance. It would be devastating beyond words. And it would ruin my ability to financially retire. Like, it would be bad. I don't know what to say, man, except terrible. Ryan says, Luke, do you think ONE FC is going to cut ties to all their MMA programming either this year or the next two? They seem hell-bent on Nogi and mixed rules Muay Thai and the like. Yeah, I think eventually they're going to probably go under too. This gentleman writes, pick 2011 Aldo versus Topuria or 2015 McGregor versus Lopez. Okay. Topuria. And then 2015 McGregor versus Lopez. Ooh. I'm tempted to pick McGregor, but he had real flaws that whole time. A guy like Lopez could give him problems. I guess I'd probably go McGregor, but like, he's going to gas. Lopez is going to win that one if he gasses. Lopez has offense everywhere. Like, Lopez couldn't sub him. Of course he could, Yeah, I probably would go McGregor, but I'm kind of feeling Lopez, being honest with you, like heart of hearts. Jeffrey says, PFL is so behind that just this week they found out they hit the... Okay. That's a funny joke. Okay. Love says, any word on the canceled Bellator events late last year? Nope. Was planning on attending the Chicago card. I had a bunch of people reach out to me about that one and was hoping for a reschedule. The only quality MMA I can watch since the UFC steers clear of here. Yep. That's the other part too. Like, they're going back to Seattle, the UFC is, which is great with this Henry Cejudo and Song Yudong card. But like, this is why you need a diverse array of like top tier promotions, because they can service fans in different ways. But if it's just one, you're at the mercy of what one will do. This gentleman writes, Luke, thoughts on the success and rise of MMA YouTubers in light of the challenges you've witnessed across other MMA media avenues? They do different things for the most part. I mean, there's a bunch of different kinds of media MMA YouTubers. I tend to think that I tend to think that in general, they're a response to the failures of the media class in MMA. Now, it's not to say that they make up for them in all ways. In fact, in other ways, they're even worse. But in a lot of ways, they're the product of what they laid out. I mean, first of all, if you can make a living off of YouTube, a lot of these, I mean, some of these guys do interviews, a lot of them don't. And like, the ones that don't, to me, are much more interesting, or don't do many of them anyway, because it's sort of where I'm headed. Like, I don't get a lot. I mean, I want to be clear. Like, there's a lot of guys I'd still be happy to interview, but most of them I'm not, to be honest with you. Like, they don't have much interesting to say. Some do, and some don't at one point of the year, and they might have a lot more to say interesting later in the year, in which case, the equation can change. But like the MMA YouTubers, like they have like MMA media class is all about being as obsequious towards power as possible, right? Like we're going to be as deferential to power as possible, and you do get some of that in the YouTuber class. But again, I'm not an expert on the MMA YouTube class. I can only say what I've seen, and I'm sure I'm missing quite a bit. But to the extent that I've experienced it, I think that they have a much more adversarial relationship with the sport. Now, I think part of that gets to a way that is adversarial for sport and adversarial for clicks and adversarial for attention, and not really adversarial because you care about affecting positive change in any kind of way or really shining a light on, and they also don't have that journalistic impulse in that same kind of way from many of them I've seen. But the other ones that do, they do these little documentaries. Those are very, very interesting and helpful. Or, like as I mentioned, they're not deferential to power in the same kind of ways that the traditional MMA media is. And I think like the MMA media created that by being so fucking deferential to power. It enabled a whole class of media people who are going to be able to talk about things that the media class simply is not willing to or able to, depending on your view. I think that a lot of that is good. However, I'm going to say the same thing, dude. They are anybody who succeeds on any platform. Somebody who's a big winner on Instagram. We'll see what happens with TikTok, but someone who's a big winner on TikTok, or somebody in this particular case who's a big winner on YouTube, they are a slave to the algorithm. And over time, it warps their decision-making and it warps their perspective and it warps who they are so that they're feeding it more nimbly and with less oversight or with less purpose other than to just feed it all. And this process just kind of erodes standards over time, and it just becomes a complete algorithm slave in every way. That's really what I think you see a lot, again, to the extent that I'm familiar with any of the stuff, which is debatable, but to the extent that I am, what I've seen is there's a little bit of that happening. But that's inevitable. That's just the nature of platforms. We have ceded control of the internet to these various oligarchic platforms, and you either play ball by their rules or you don't. That has some benefits, but it has some downsides too. Fred says, Luke, if I can give a movie recommendation, Conclave is well worth checking out. I almost saw it. I didn't. I actually have one for you guys. The way it's filmed is stunning, and all the performances are great. I saw this movie, and it was not that good, but it's worth watching if you have a moment. Hold on. I'll show it to you. Let's see. Yeah, this one. Hold on. Here, this one. It's not that good. It's okay. The Order is what it's called, and it's saying based on the chilling true story. That's the part that gives it decent amount. Jude Law, basically, Jude Law is in this, and I think Journey Smollett. I think that might be related to the other Smollett, Jussier Smollett. I'm not sure. I didn't even look into it, but I'm guessing that they're related. In any case, he basically is an FBI guy who partners with local law enforcement to hunt down guys who in the 80s in the Pacific West Coast were into like hardcore militia building, attack the American government levels of fucking insane white supremacy. But, the white supremacy part they didn't care so much about was the fact that these guys they had done something unusual. And I'm not giving too much away here, I promise. They had done something unusual. They started robbing banks. And apparently that was very unusual for militia gangs to do, whether they were white nationalist aligned or some other kind of version aligned, that they just didn't do that sort of a thing. They did recruiting in a more soft kind of way, and they grew their power in a more soft kind of way. Well, these fuckers were robbing banks, and they didn't know who was robbing banks at first. And then when they realized, oh, wait, it's these guys robbing banks, and then they found their operation, these dudes were loaded after stealing so much money that they became basically this gigantic threat that these dudes had to take down. And it shows them doing it. In the end, Jude Law gives a so-so performance. It is beautifully shot. There are some cool scenes in it. The guy here, this dude, I don't know his name, but this one here, this guy right here, he gives a good performance. If you have Max, you'll recognize this dude. He is the guy who's the star of Juror Number 2, which is out on Max. I walked out of that, or at least I left the living room. My wife wanted to watch it. I didn't see it. But The Order is pretty good. It's pretty good. It's not great, but it's pretty good. Look, what do you think of the UFC going to end up, excuse me, what do you think the UFC is going to end up doing with 311's location? Do you think they'll move it from the Intuit Dome with everything going on? Do we know if the Intuit Dome is close to the fires? From what I understand, it's not that close. But I don't know. I don't know. I mean, listen, I saw them move it on a week's notice before, and they've got more time than that this time. They could always hold events in the Apex if they need to, that they could sell pay-per-view against it. They would lose the gate, but they could do it. I would suspect that the UFC is not about canceling events. They're going to find some way to put that on if they're not able to have it in California. Jeffrey said, I heard the winner of Dern versus Hebos gets a special belt. It's the belt that held up BC's pants. Yes, that's a fair assessment, my friend. Kobe says, Luke, why are you so high on Sean Brady? His best wins are washed burns. Washed is a strong word. Post-prime is a better one. Chiesa and Kelvin Gastelum. Right, but he beat the fuck out of Gastelum, and the Chiesa one was not that great, but he persevered. Bilal did not even wrestle against him. Yeah, he got better after that one, and also I think his smothering game is legitimate. Do I think he's the best welterweight? I don't know. He'd have to prove it, and then right now I would put that on, obviously, Bilal Muhammad, and I'd probably put Shavkat right behind him. We'll see what happens when they meet, and then there's JDM coming up too, but I think it's very, very silly to dismiss the threat of Sean Brady. Maybe you don't rate him as highly as the other threats, but to be like, oh, he's not a legitimate top title contender, I would challenge that greatly. Applejack, how do you feel about Canada becoming a state before DC? Hey, dude, they're not going to make it a state. They're going to do what they do with DC, which is they'll make it a territory, but not make it a state so that you don't have to give people like me 2 senators. That's why. It's the same thing with Puerto Rico. Although the Puerto Rican one is interesting. People always think that you could make that a state and it would be, oh, that's a big win for the Dems. I'm like, I don't know about that. I don't know about that at all. I actually think that could go the other way. Now, if you put 2 senators here, yeah, you're going to get people who are very Bernie Sanders friendly. Let's put it that way in DC, and that's why that's the number one reason why they won't make it a state. Like that's the fucking reason more than anything else. So if they ever were to take Canadian territory, they would take it and call it like a principality or fucking they would find some kind of legal designation where they could use the territory. People born there could be American citizens or something like that. And, you might get what we get here in D.C., which is you get 1 congressman, and they can only vote in committee. They cannot vote on the floor. They might get something like that, but they ain't going to make them citizens. They're not going to make it a state. Because you make it a state, and now you got to give these motherfuckers senators, and they're not going to do that. I mean, they're not going to do it for any number of reasons, but if they ever try to, they're not going to do that. They're not going to give, we're going to give a population that would be sympathetic more to New York's policies than Alabama's 2 more senators. Yeah, no, they're not doing that. Flamingo Fight Talk says, Luke, longtime fan, though I haven't watched much of any MMA content in the last year, okay? I had a really bad year. Sorry to hear that. Though better now. Good. And trying to get back into old hobbies. Thank you for your content and Happy New Year. Well, thank you. I hope this year is as promising for you as it is for the best of us. Taco says, I'm looking to start either Muay Thai or BJJ when I graduate university, but I've got a history of knee pain. Which would be better on my knee health long term? It ain't going to be jiu-jitsu. You can skip that shit completely. Although, I would say if you've got a history of knee pain, you should ask why. And are there solutions for it that are strength related? You'd be surprised how many of them are. Sean says, Luke, have you seen Nosferatu yet? No, not yet. Or Nosferatu. Only movie I've been excited about for a while. Can confirm Gladiator 2 was dog shit. Because Gladiator 1 was overrated. It's good. It's overrated. Even as a fan of the first movie. Yeah, I wasn't going to see Gladiator 2 for shit. Greg says, Happy New Year, Luke. Yes, I love that you always rec El Cielo for Colombian Fair in DC. I'd like to add some other places. Richie's in College Park. I've been there. Very good. Aroma Cafe in Springfield. I've not been there. La Fonda Paisa in Silver Spring. And La Fonda Paisa, is that the one that also has the grocery store for Colombian goods built in? There's 2 in Silver Spring. There's one by the Fillmore, which is more like an arepas place. And then there's one near like the Target / Taco Bell on that main thoroughfare by the edge of that park, and they've got both a restaurant and a grocery store built in where you can go buy like awesome Colombian goods. I forget the name of that one, but my wife goes there sometimes. MMA Judge Analyzer. Have you seen AI in work for MMA from Jabber? I have not. And by the way, my interview with the CEO is tomorrow. Now, I'm not releasing it tomorrow, but we're conducting it tomorrow. I told you guys an update from last week. That is tomorrow. That is tomorrow. I've only seen the stuff in boxing. I've not seen their work in MMA. I've not. Welcome to the party, sir. Tyler, you mentioned a few live chats ago that your blood pressure has been through the roof. Yes, it has. Although, yeah, okay, I have good news about this too. Wondering if you've considered medication to try and lower it. Don't you go dying on me. I actually got it measured recently because I had a health check-in, and it went down. It went way down. So it's still a little high, but it's much, much lower than the last time I had it checked, which was maybe like 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, something like that. It's much, much better. It's much better. So I'm okay, I think. Anil says, Lex Fridman interviewed Zelensky this week. He got fucking creamed for it, too. He seems rational for someone who MAGA thinks is Lucifer incarnate. Oh, you talking about Zelensky? Yeah, I don't think he's Lucifer incarnate any more than any other politician is. I thought people were too harsh on Lex in the past, but he is a hack. I mean, he was asking things about like forgiveness for Putin. It's like, dude, you can be clear-eyed about the stakes, and you can be clear-eyed about the real politic involved, and you can be clear-eyed about what is actually feasible and what should be done to minimize harm, while still recognizing these come with considerable difficult trade-offs for, frankly, both parties, but in particular Ukraine, as it leads to territorial resignation, essentially. And Lex was trying to dance around that as best he possibly could. I'll be clear about this. I do not understand his appeal. I get that he is curious, and I get that he, at this point, gets good guests, and I get that he tries to be humane. But he also had RFK on and did not pressure him back on anything at all. And the point I'm trying to make to you is, that's what you would want out of any interviewer. If you're going to take on some kind of political figure, just fucking the whole time. I mean, this is what, Kyle Kalinski's critique of Rogan on Trump is true. That's the most obsequious interview of Trump of anyone ever. Like, if Joe were on cable news, it would have been worse than any version of that. It's the most obsequious interview by far of Trump, by far, in that entire political season. There's not even a close fucking second. I guess Theo would be a little bit. We're not even talking about, at that point, it's a different kind of thing. Just not pushing back at all. Lex, that's all he does. There's no meaningful pushback ever about any of these kinds of things. And it blows my fucking mind. So it's not that he's not, I respect the fact that he's curious. I respect the fact that he's trying to get seemingly on some level to the bottom of these kinds of things, but with either a willful naivete, an incuriousness, or a lack, I should say, incuriosity about certain aspects of things that could be troublesome, kind of almost warped moral understanding of matters. I mean, people like it. Don't get me wrong, he's more successful than me, but I don't get it. Vipin says, why hasn't the UFC pushed Illia the way they did Conor? Of course they market him, but nowhere near prime Conor, yet Illia has all those attributes to perhaps be as big, I feel. Partly they pushed Conor because Conor made them. I don't know if Illia is making them. And he had a big showdown as this institutional figure against Aldo. He was the only champion in that weight class at that point that they had ever had. It was like this towering figure. Illia just kind of dispatched the two guys since then in one fucking year with authority. It was almost more clinical in a way, but it's a different circumstance. It's a different time. They have a different model of how they make money, where they're not as reliant on significant star power as they once were. It's still valuable, it's still important, it still matters, but not like the way it once did. And so, yeah. Mua says, why are there always so many damn PFL and fighter pay questions in your lives? Are fans trying to flex their hardcore credentials? Nobody cares. Hey, guys, I don't ask the questions. You do. Terrence says, not sure how to articulate this, but as a black man in America, I feel lost. We voted for someone who empowers racist and anti-women voices. We have social heads who don't protect us. Do we ever prosper? It's scary. Well, I would be the last person to ever, I can't tell women how they should live. I can't tell anybody how they should live, but I definitely cannot tell, various minorities in this country how they should view matters and how they should live. I don't know how to do any of that, nor am I even going to attempt it. What was the question again? I feel lost. Do we ever prosper? Yeah. Understand something about the nature of progress in this country. Right? It's sort of similar to what I had said at the beginning of this. People think the linear path is this. It is not. That is not the path we are on. The path we are on is there is going to be at various points in the nature of political struggle in this country where there is a surge of progress, and then there is going to be a concerted period of backsliding that comes after it. And that concerted period of backsliding that comes after it is a fucking guarantee. And they are not really good about teaching a lot of this. Like, this is why, you look at the Ku Klux Klan having a surge in membership following Reconstruction in the South, right? It's sort of like a perfect example of this. Oh, well, there was the Civil War and the country didn't divide and we're going to rebuild, right? After rebuilding, what are we going to do? We're going to terrorize black populations. Right? That's what we're going to do. You expand the right to vote for women, and there's going to be other forms of backsliding that come. I mean, you can pick any version of what you want to point to as social progress in the 20th century and now in the 21st. And it's going to usher in its own democratic and otherwise forms of backsliding. It is inevitable. It is the nature of this country. It is the nature of what we do. It is the nature of who we are. It is the nature of political struggle. People think that like one side wins and then everyone just decides that's the way it's going to be. Nope. That is not the way it is going to be. But the way it is going to be is you're going to try and get your wins. You're going to try and make them durable, but many of them will. Many of them will stick. Many of them will not. And the ones that are not are going to get peeled and uprooted right out of the ground. And it's going to be up to a few subsequent generation on their terms, on their political struggle, to get that going, at least on the same version it was, or a similar kind of version in the future. That is the nature of how this works. And it's a bit of a sobering thought, depending on your perspective here, but it is true. And once you really fully accept that every time there is some kind of demonstrable progress, that there is going to be a noteworthy, sustained, clear challenge, backsliding, undoing of that by the rival political coalition, this actually makes a lot of sense. Cooper, welcome to the party. Thomas says, in recent memory, what's the best laugh DC has gotten out of you? I find these moments on MK to be some of my favorites. DC? Daniel Cormier? The city? District of Columbia? You mean BC? Oh, BC. Right? Well, they're not exactly next to each other on the keyboard. I don't know how to answer that. What's the best laugh? BC makes me laugh all the time off air. And on air too, but I'm not sure. He's in a good mood today too, by the way. Anthony, can Luigi get convicted of murder by a jury of his peers? Sure. Good luck finding a jury that hasn't been affected negatively by health insurance companies. Yeah, well, jury selection is going to be, if it goes to jury, it's going to be tough. Very tough. Cooper. Hey, Luke, any tattoo journey updates? Any current plans for more? No. I have to buy a new computer, and I want to buy a good one. And, I have to be a little bit more financially prudent, because the stuff I want, you could pay $500 for a tattoo and you can get a halfway decent one, but I'm trying to get some like big pieces, and these are thousands of dollars. And right now I need to make more appropriate financial decisions. JP says, "What's up, Luke? You catch our guy W. Kamau Bell smoking fools on Celebrity Jeopardy?" Yeah, of course I did, bro. I was talking about on privately. Keep a lookout for his next match. Yeah, dude. W. Kamau Bell is the fucking man. I love that guy. You know, he's the best. Shouts to him, bro. Elodin. Why is the recent Whitaker loss not seen as a freak loss like the O'Malley Chito one or Ortega Yair one? It wasn't intentional and the choke wasn't even in. I feel like that fight didn't tell us anything because he still got overwhelmed in the end. That's the difference. Ortega Yair, it felt like he was getting his ass kicked, but then it's almost like the incident interrupted the flow. And in the case of what was the first one you mentioned? Chito O'Malley, where he was hitting the leg. There were questions about how brittle he was heading into that contest. And again, I think over time he's answered that it's not really very brittle at all. But there was some concern about it over the course of that. And the injury was part of a broader narrative. In this case, he still got his back taken. He was overwhelmed. And I grant that he tapped way too quickly and it all kind of happened very fast. It wasn't without like significant like hand fighting struggle. That's true. But it felt like what he did before that was so effortless, so fast, so overwhelming, like a fucking terrifying force of nature that the injury is almost, fluky, yes, but almost incidental. Like what really matters is the fact that he overwhelmed Whitaker like that, Mr. Rat, Luke, when is the Jaden Daniels jersey getting delivered in the house? That's a great fucking question. Any special plans for the playoff game this weekend? I'll probably watch with a friend on Sunday. Yeah, dude, they're going to play. What time are they playing the Bucks? Let me see. I know it's a Sunday game. Is it 8 p.m.? All right, here we go. Commanders, Buccaneers. Yeah, Sunday, 8 p.m. Whew. Oh, man, I have to go to New York the next day, so I'm not going to sleep for shit that night. Yeah, I'll probably just have a friend over to watch. It's going to be fun as shit. I want the black one. Hold on, here we go. This is the one I want. Commanders jerseys. Yo, this is the one I want. I mean, this might be the fake one, but I mean, I want the one that looks like this. Can you change the picture? Here we go. This is the one that I want. So this is the Jaden Daniels one. It's got this commander shield on this side, but if you notice, it's got the DC flag right here on this side, which I think is cool as shit. That's the one that I want, but I just haven't bought it yet. Don beefs with random people in TikTok. Wait, Don Davis? On whose account? On the PFL account? I got to see that. Afifi says, weeks ago, Joe Rogan signaled that he felt pressure from Dana to endorse Trump. He did? Joe and most MMA was right-wing before, but what do you think about Dana influencing political views of people? I mean, it would make sense, right? They're pushy people in general, and then Joe Rogan's got a big audience, and I mean, I have a hard time believing that. I tend to think that Joe probably would have ended up in that position. Well, that's a little. I think I also think Joe is a bit of a pushover too. I don't know. I don't know how much Dana influenced it, but that would not surprise me at all. I mean, dude, this is how a lot of political coalition building happens, is through pressure. People think it's all like handshaking deals. I mean, that's part of it, but a lot of it is like, you're going to support this. We need you to do it. This is important in certain cases, or else. I doubt he did that, but like that's a lot of how political messaging, coalition building, peer pressure is a big one. Did Combate Global go under? They haven't had an event in 6 months. I don't know. It's a question for Campbell McLaren, but he's got a real bad attitude about everything, and I don't know if he's willing to talk about it. Very funny that he spent a lot of time talking about the death of MMA media. And, well, look at his portfolio. Anil says, Elon Musk finding out quickly the kind of bottom feeders he funded to win, and finding out why Twitter needs to be moderated because he got his fifis hurt is glorious. We need a better class of oligarchical villains. This is about as good as this oligarchical class is going to get, though, my friend. Yes. And it's so funny, too, that like he gets eaten alive by the very people he's been empowered on this H1B visa issue. And then after that, like he really is like, oh, the AFD in Germany, that's a big one. And DEI is important because fires and, you know, it's like the fault of everything that you've got going on is it's people who don't look like you. That's the sum total of your problems. Right after he got into deep shit with his own people about the H1B. He's such a, I mean, it amazes me that people don't see through him, but they don't. They fucking don't. Anthony, when an athlete is in the zone, is that a thing you believe in? Yes. How would you define something being in the zone, e.g. Silva being in the zone against Griffin? So under high pressure elite performance, but more than just that, like you're in a groove where decision making is coming easily. You're making great choices very, very quickly. And especially if it's like higher than a normal standard of performance for you. I fully believe in that. I absolutely think that's real. Joe, who would fare better today, Fedor or Crow Cop? That's a good question. I still think Fedor would, but I think it's closer now than it was. Well, it's still pretty close in their heyday, but it's even closer now. I think the takedown defense and then the striking on the feet would be really good for Crow Cop. I'm assuming he'd have him like, well, yeah, I mean, with modern practices, you could get these guys to a different level. Yes. Joe, is Topuria the best boxer we have seen in MMA fundamentally? He's one of them. And how or what separates his stand-up game from everyone else's? I mean, he's got his own kind of style, if that's what you mean. But I think if you ask him, like, what does he really excel with? He excels with rhythm disruption and pattern change. He's very, very more than just that, of course, but he's very, very good with that. And he's good. He's good at moving at and returning at angles. He's good. He's got excellent footwork. But the thing he's very good at is establishing patterns and then changing the patterns and then change those and then remixing them and then doing these all to like devastating effect. He's very good at that. Chris says, one of the greatest MMA performances is GSP's fight against John Fitch. Yes. Beat him down in all facets of the sport. Dude, that was a big fight. John Fitch had to wait forever to get a title shot. And he was beating people up on his way. Finally gets it. And then St. Pierre adjusts. I mean, because at that point, Fitch was like a consensus number 2 fighter in that division. And then GSP went in there and gave him the business. Alex says, the working class elected a billionaire who will enrich his fellow billionaires at the expense of the nation. Don't tell them that. They won't believe you. I've tried that. They don't listen. They also control the media. Are war and revolution likely to follow? No, I suspect not. A coup by a slightly less bad billionaire. Well, one never knows with the mendacity of the billionaire class. I don't know. No, I suspect you're going to get something a little bit different. I suspect what you're going to get is a looting, a plundering, self-dealing, massively corrupt era in corporate governance or lack thereof. And then I think down the line, it's going to be so bad that it's going to lead to a series of reforms to rein all of the abuses in. But we're going to get abuses for a long time before that happens. That's what I think. I don't think it's going to lead to like, although, you know, I also think that we're living in a time of deep political instability and violence. But in terms of the billionaire class, you're just going to see them on the take, man. You're going to see, there's not too many predictions that I feel very comfortable giving. This is one. Remember me saying this, it is going to be a venal, self-serving, self-dealing, corrupt, massively enriching era for not just the oligarchic class, but corporate governance more generally. Ovechkin is 23 goals away from Gretzky's record. He's going to be the greatest goal scorer in NHL history. There's people who always debate, like, who's the greatest athlete in DC history, and people don't want to give it to Ovechkin. He had a league, granted, he should have won more, but he had at least one league championship, and he's the all-time leading scorer. Get the fuck out of here. It's him. Please, no boss. Just asking if you've reviewed the data I sent you by email. I got your email today. I have not. Please give me a break. I mean, I thank you so much for sending me. I greatly appreciate it. When I say a break, I mean nicely. I've had a sick family. I've had in-laws in town through the holidays. You got to give me a chance, but I'm going to get to it. Okay? That's a promise. Ryan says, I recently watched Cain versus JDS 2 and 3, and my God, that was a sanctioned assault. Yeah, he beat the fuck out of him. How would Prime Cain have done against Prime Stipe? I think Prime Cain beats him. What about Prime John? That's the one I don't know. Who just moves up to heavyweight without getting fat. I don't know how that one goes. But I think Prime Cain demolishes Prime Stipe. I think he overruns him. This gentleman says, I believe Arman has a clear path to a W if he can recreate the first fight, but over 5 rounds, Islam has shown to not be able to keep high pace the older he gets. That's maybe, but you still got to put a pace on him, and you got to win at least one of the first 3 rounds. And you have to seal it down the stretch. So it's a tough call. NYM says, thoughts on Aspinall saying that if the Jon Jones fight happens, he will not be getting paid more. Yeah, of course he wouldn't be. Why would he? Not negotiating is insane, in my opinion, since Jon Jones isn't a huge pay-per-view star. This is so fucking wrong about Jon Jones. It blows my mind when people say this. I have people bitching at me about this in my comments, too. I want to take my glasses off. These things are good to keep your glasses on, but they, like, hurt the back of my ear. Guys, I saw someone saying that, like, Jon Jones is not in the top 10 all-time UFC pay-per-views. So fucking what? So fucking what? Okay, so he's not Conor, Lesnar, or Ronda. Okay. He's outside of that. Big fucking deal. Guys, if you can sell 500,000 to 700,000 pay-per-view buys, the company you are working for is going to make a fucking killing. A killing. That is a massively successful number. Now, of course, 1 million is like the gold standard. And that is pristine, and only a very few can do that. And he might have some of those. I'm not even sure. But he has a lot that are not like that. Some that are closer to 500,000. Dude, at 500,000, you're printing fucking money. You're printing money. That is an enormous sum. If he was hovering around the 100s or 200s, we'd be having a very different conversation. Of course, he's had some that underperformed, but he's had a bunch that are 4, 5, 6, 7, 800,000. A whole bunch in that middle range. And so that is, he has been a next level pay-per-view star? No. But a very successful pay-per-view star? Yes. Yes, by 1 million miles. Yes. Guys, I don't even fucking like Jon Jones. You know I don't like him. I don't give a shit if we never see him again. I don't care if the world never sees him. He moved inside of a cave in the middle of the most remote part of the world and we never saw him again. I'd be more than happy about that. But, like, does he sell well? Well, listen to the words I'm saying. Does he sell well on pay-per-view? Yes. Yes, he does. Don't let anybody tell you anything other than that. It's simply not true. Now, you can say, even with that, I think he doesn't deserve X amount of dollars. Fine, whatever. But getting back to this question, thoughts on Aspinall saying if the Jon Jones fight happens, he will not be getting paid more. Why the fuck would he? His contract is already written. Jon is the one that has a little bit of leverage being like, I don't have to come back anymore. But Tom Aspinall hasn't had anybody give him a real opportunity. And by that, I mean a foe. He hasn't had Curtis Blades tried, but I mean like a big star. They won't do that. They haven't done it yet. So he is waiting to, like, get to a place where he can begin to exercise some leverage. He doesn't have that. He's not there now. And the contract's already written. Why would he get more? What's he going to fucking say to him? I'm going to sit out. They're going to tell him to go pound sand. He has no leverage. Why would he get more? Why would he? Oh, it's a bigger fight. It'll make more. You think the UFC cares? Guys, they're pay 20% or less every year, fixed. We know that from the court case. That's their plan. That's written into, like, we know that. I'm not making this up. It's not my supposition. That's the reality. They're not just going to pay you more because it'll make more. I guess we just got to pay the guy more. No, we're going to pay what's in your fucking deal. No way, dude. Otter, what's up, bro? Never ever been done before. Says, my brain is broken by modern tech and social media. Any advice on how to learn to read and take information in other than just do it? Yes, I've said this before. You have to understand there is something called reading stamina. And like running stamina, you have to work on it. You have to work on it. First of all, you should be measuring how much screen time you have. And if you're up around 6, 7, 8 hours, holy shit, you have too much going on. Even if you're at 4 or 5, that might be a lot. But I can see, depending on what you do, how that's not necessarily the case. But you need to work on your reading stamina. And by that, I mean not just reading, I read for an hour flipping through Twitter. That's not reading. That's you're playing the slot machine. No, reading a book or an article, a long one, or something that requires duration for just that piece itself. And if you're having trouble doing it for long periods of time, then don't worry about it. Work on 10 minutes at a time. Work on 15, 20, 30 at a time. And I would say work up to an hour, and that's really all you need to work on. After that, you're fairly back to normal at that point, or at least 45 minutes anyway. But you have to work on your stamina. You have to work on your stamina, and you have to remove the dopamine hits of social media that just have you craving new all the time. And you have to sit with something. So give yourself the time and the space to do that. Work on the stamina. If you're asking how to retain it, take notes. And I don't mean on the computer. I mean with a pen and a pencil. There are now numerous studies that have shown your ability to retain things goes up when you write versus when you type. Give yourself that. So work on the stamina, take notes about it, and then you'll see over time, I believe, you'll get a lot more out of that experience. Hello from the 51st state. Can't wait till Trump finds out that he'd get 22% of the vote here. Yeah, I don't think he cares. Stop the steal. NYM. BC said that he was supposed to go to Saudi for Usyk Fury, but didn't. Would he have gotten the bone saw by MBS or Dick down by Turkey had he went? I think he's good. But me, I ain't doing that shit. Otter says, Luke, speaking of the view of women in the sports scene, what is your take on Aljo's video ranking the top 5 hottest UFC fight? Did he? Jesus Christ. I mean, having not seen it, I'm not sure what to say, except, this is probably content that will win with the audience, but that tells you a lot. The very definition of perfunctory, Big AF. Did you expect Merab to attack the takedown versus Umar? Yeah, of course. Was he going to win striking? How do you see that playing out? Well, that's the central tension in the fight. I think he's going to get countered a lot. How much will offensive wrestling factor in Umar's game plan? Probably a fair amount. I think a lot of defense at first and then offense later in the wrestling. Yeah, for sure. Ray says, what a truly incredible coincidence that Musk finds himself in an H1B controversy and suddenly dedicates every waking day to non-new UK scandals. I mean, it's unfucking... Dude, how can you look at what this guy is doing and be like, it's good for society that someone has this much power to influence discourse, legislation, national affairs, national security? Like, I don't give a shit. Like, even if you like this guy, imagine someone who is the opposite of that, who has the same amount of power. Does that not frighten you? Do you think that that is not corrosive for society? It's clearly bad. It is clearly very, very bad that one person can have this kind of megaphone that he can just dump. And by the way, like the amount of complete lies and fake news that he shares unabashedly with, I mean, just the fact that what he did to DC is proof enough. The guy told how many followers does he have? 200 million? That the legislation from the continuing resolution afforded billions of dollars that the national taxpayers were going to be on the hook for. And all it did was transfer administrative jurisdiction, not one fucking penny, to the extent that any taxpayer is on the hook is for the development itself, which will be for people like me to pay who live in the city and nobody else. He fucking lied. And he does this all the time. So even if you like this guy and you can't stand that I'm saying this about Elon Musk, imagine somebody who is the opposite of him. So all the things you like about him, imagine someone who has the opposite, but they have the same kind of megaphone, the same kind of financial resources, the same kind of political commitments, the same kind of ability to lean on the administrative state to prevent the abuses in their workplace, in their sectors, in their businesses. If that doesn't frighten you, you're fucking dead inside. You are dead inside. There's no in between with this guy. You can't look at the amount of power that someone like that has and the reckless way in which he chooses to both reckless and then also concerted, like in terms of political persuasion with elected officials, and think that that's good that one person has that kind of power. Clearly very bad. Like Tony Stark died in the Avengers, right? He died in Infinity War, or no, he died in what was the second one? Not Infinity War was the first one. Whatever. Good is my answer. Oh, Batman dies in this movie. Good. I don't need to see billionaire hero inventors anymore. I've seen what billionaire hero inventors look like, and they look like they look like pasty refrigerators with apartheid accents. That's what they look like. Did you see the Jai Opetaia KO? Yeah, he smoked that fucker inside 4, right? He is running through cruiserweight like a hot knife through butter. Biggest threat to Usyk if he doesn't retire. I don't think he's a threat to Usyk for a couple of reasons. One, he's not on the level. Albart says, Luke, I'm 27, an engineer making over 100K. Thankfully, dude, at 27, making over 100K, it's fucking good. It's not enough for comfort and semi-luxury in LA. Yeah, that's probably true. What do you think would be the salary for this? I don't know what your needs are, but, 175, 2, something like that for LA. Lapo says, how do you counter the think more than alive? Wait, what? How do you counter the think more than live a moment? It is something I really struggle with. I don't know what you're asking me, sir. I would make an attempt to answer, but I do not know. I do not know. Tuchang says, what do you make of Trump's infatuation with Greenland? I actually think it makes a fair amount of sense in the following way. Here's how you know that the right wing in this country doesn't believe any of their own bullshit about climate change. Now, again, as it relates to the LA fires, it's a separate conversation. I don't really know to what extent it contributes to that, or even really the hurricanes in Florida. I'm not a meteorologist or a climate scientist. I don't know how to answer those questions. What I can say is the only reason you would really have a strong belief that the future security and economic interests would be secured by taking control of Greenland is because you understand that as the planet warms, these are going to be shipping routes and various ways in which you can intercept foreign powers geographically with much shorter distances, or be as a depot or a strategic base for the launching of attacks in certain ways. But more to the point about commercial shipping routes. And by the way, they have a huge mineral deposits. They have huge, they have huge metal deposits underneath that permafrost. When that gets baked out, there's going to be just a ton of natural resources. This just tells you that like what does Greenland have to offer us on January 9th, 2025? Fucking nothing, or not much of anything really. But once everything melts, it has a significant amount of value, actually. And I think that they understand that. Whether it's theirs for the taking is not the point that I'm making. But like, this just tells you what they actually think about climate change. It tells you what they actually think. Because what they're actually doing is they're planning for the future. And they're planning for a future where shit is a lot more melted, and they need access to the security and natural resources and shipping routes that come with all of that that's going to be opened up when there's further warming of the planet. That's what I think. Luke, what's the future of the NAACP? Don't know. Don't know if I'm the guy to ask. Michael says, I mentioned on BC stream, I'd love to see MK content with you two on a road trip. Yes. And only he can touch the radio. Oh, no. If that happened, how long would you stay in the car if you couldn't wear earplugs? Not long. An hour. Alan W. says, why is your navel tattoo a subject of contention? Some things I like talking about, some things I don't. Some things are for public consumption, some things are not. It's a fair question, but that's the best answer I can give. Street1234, update your live chat thumbnail photo. You look way better now, my G. I don't look way better, but I do look different. You're right. XV Sting says, Luke, are you still watching Ghibli films? Not anyone recently, not since vacation. If you're still looking for some anime recommendations, give Paprika a go. Inception is loosely inspired by the film. Duly noted. Devin says, you're right about GSP Usman. Usman was more of a powerhouse wrestler, maybe. GSP's takedowns, variety, and timing was unmatched. Will still be champ today. Also, he had very good striking. He had a phenomenal jab. Phenomenal jab. And by the way, remember his background was Kyokushin karate. My namesake says, hey, look, do you think there's any validity to the idea that Dana spent so much time giving Jones praise to entice him to take the Aspinall fight, to try and build his ego to hopefully get him to agree? I think that's a pretty reasonable hypothesis. We won't know in the end. Joe Rogan recently saying that, of the $30 million that he thought that Jones was asking for was turned out the bullshit rumor that Jones might retire. That also might just be astroturfing. It's really hard to say. But I don't think he was doing it because he really believed it in his heart of hearts. I think he was trying to do it for some other kind of outcome. Alan W. says, capitalism idolatry is funny. Musk created nothing. He is Steve Jobs. While the Wozniaks of the world invent, the financiers get credit, like giving the owner of the Chicago Bulls all the credit for Jordan's greatness. I mean, I think there have been some things that Elon has done that have been kind of interesting, particularly with SpaceX. But to be clear, money was a key contributor in the formation of his impresario identity as well as his business dealings, like just buying into things that existed ahead of time. Wilster says, did you manage to get my email re-Saudis targeting as newer for sports? Oh, the snooker email. It is tagged to read. I've been overwhelmed, guys. I apologize. I will get to it. Check out MMA Joey. You should have him on soon. All right. Duly noted. RM says, I'm seeing the sentiment of Umar Merab not being an exciting matchup. Am I crazy? I cannot wait to see how they match up. I think it'll be exciting. I think it'll be nip and tuck. Yeah. I actually think it'll be very exciting, at least for a time and in certain spots. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Liam says, would you go to Thailand to watch authentic Muay Thai fights? Yes. It's on the bucket list. And thank you for that. I appreciate that, Liam. Yeah, I would love to go to Thailand. That's on the list. And then Afifi says, fun fact, for the 2016 election, Gary Johnson, not Trump, was second. Climate change seems to increase the intensity of hurricanes. Yes. I mean, I realize that there is a relationship between temperature, the nature of more water being in the atmosphere and being heated, being a contributor to Florida hurricanes. I'm talking about any one Florida hurricane and to what extent you can pinpoint climate change being a significant factor in how it is and what negative externalities it causes. That's what I mean. Not that there is no relationship between wildfires and climate change or hurricanes and climate change. I want to be very clear about that. I recognize there is an obvious connection between them. That's not my point. My point is, what about these particular fires? What about those particular hurricanes? And these are sometimes questions that are beyond my pay grade. Salam, says Tanvir. Are you surprised how the NBA reacted towards Dwight Howard tweeting Free Palestine? No. Did you guys see this from Dwight Howard? Dwight Howard said he had talked to some people who were Palestinian and, decided to tweet like, hey, Free Palestine. And then within like an hour, Adam Silver called him. His agents called him. I think the team owner may have called him. Friends being like, hey, you got to take this down. You got to take this down. This is a country that is simply allergic to the idea. And it blows my fucking mind. Allergic to the idea that there is anything to being Palestinian, that Palestinian identity is real, that Palestinian suffering is real, that Palestinian suffering should be ameliorated. They're just fucking immune in this country to these basic truths or needs, depending on which ones we're talking about. And as long as I have breath in my lungs, you'll never get that from me. Jeffrey says, today, LIL, Long Island Luke, to put his blunt out safer next time. Tell Long Island Luke to put his blunt out safer next time. These LA Fires are getting well. Well, he's on Long Island. I don't think we're good, but I'll relay the message. Thank you. And then the It Factor says, Luke, I need career advice. New job bought me a MacBook Air before first day. Good sign or bad sign? Well, not knowing what your job is or what the computing demands are, I would actually say this is probably a good sign. It'd be worse if they were giving you like really expensive shit, because now they're asking you to do heavy lifting. If you got a MacBook Air, are you doing heavy lifting? Snadge says, do you think the UFC will pay an extra premium for Ditcheva because of the blow it would be to the PFL? Yes. Yes, I think they would. I absolutely think that they would. I think that they would make that. I think they would trade a lot for her. Yeah. Wisely, by the way. MB says, next for Francis. I think he's going to look for Wilder. I think they're going to try and make that Wilder fight. It ain't going to be fucking Nemkov, I can tell you that. Not anytime soon. I mean, they might do the Nemkov fight at the end of the year or something, but not right now. He's going to get a boxing partner. All All right, boys and girls. Thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. For the gentleman who did the stats, I'm going to get back to you. For the gentleman who did the snooker thing on sports washing, I'm going to get back to you. This podcast will go up on tonight or tomorrow morning, I should say. And oh, yes, one more reminder. Friday, tomorrow, MK, we're going to be here. And then Saturday, we're going to watch some fights together. It's going to be a grand time. I love you all. Thank you so much. Until next time, you know the drill. Stay frosty.